Hello, my name is Jorb. I love film. I love film so much, in fact, that I was spending lots and lots of money every month getting things developed at a local lab. It was anywhere between like $12 and $14, I think, a roll. And I had a couple months where it was like between 5 and 10 rolls. I couldn't do that. I couldn't sustain that. So I, as many people have turned to home development. I've been using this, the Cinestill Color Simplified kit. I've always liked the results. I have no reason to try anything else. But depending on where you buy the kit, I've cut my costs down to like $2 a roll for development. Yes, there's a pretty big startup cost in home development. This isn't even all the stuff in home scanning, especially. But to me, it's totally been worth it. I've begun to really enjoy the experience. It's given me more options than my local lab had. My local lab wouldn't push or pull, and I can do that now. And if you love film and you love developing film and you want to make it easier and less expensive on yourself, I think this is a great way to do it. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when I do it. Mostly because none of the videos I watched when I was learning to do this were presented the way I want. I want it in first person like this. I want somebody to go through every step, explain what's happening, explain why they're doing it the way they are, talk about how much it costs to get everything that they got. And if anybody was sort of presenting like that, they weren't as cheap as me. Or they weren't, alluding to that. I don't want to see somebody product demo a full kit, really. I want to see what it looks like when a normal person, when a regular person does this stuff, because I'm a regular person who's about to do this stuff. So that's it. I don't need to explain what you're about to watch. If you want to watch it, you'll know by now. So stick around. Yes, if that sounds like it's of interest to you, if you like the way I present, the way I talk, or whatever, I hope you consider subscribing. This is my second channel. I mostly present synthesizer stuff. But film has been thrilling to me lately. I'm feeling the same drive to teach that I do about electronic instruments. I'm babbling. Shall we begin? I think of this whole process really as two big sections. We have to mix all the chemicals, and then we have to do a batch of development. So all the specific equipment you need to mix a batch of chemicals, you need some sort of a temperature-controlled water bath. I am using a regular Instant Pot sous vide cooker. You input a specific temperature, and it'll take this bucket of water to that specific temperature. I bought it on Facebook Marketplace for like 30 bucks. I didn't have a bucket. I got this bucket from the dollar store. That's something you can go cheap on. Some complete film development kits will come with like multiple graduated cylinders. For the Cinestill Color Simplified kit, the only thing I've ever really needed to measure is water. Everything else is pre-measured for you in the kit already. So I only need one container for measuring, and I don't need to be much more precise than milliliters. So I got this at Walmart. Same thing for this funnel. You'll need a funnel. You'll need a place for your chemicals to end up. I'm reusing smart water bottles. Those are whatever, $2 each. And I have different caps or slightly different bottles so I can keep all the chemicals straight. That's another whatever, $6. I am at the point where I trust the sous vide cooker, but I do have this just regular meat thermometer that will occasionally get used to check temperatures. But that's really it. The kit, something to measure water, a funnel, water bath and the sous vide are probably the biggest expense, and then bottles. And I guess if you want to count the sort of expendable stuff, distilled water as well. But that's it. That's everything for mixing the chemicals. And just like a broad safety warning, these chemicals are dangerous. If you read what's on the back, you do really, really have to be careful. And that extends not only to you and your hands, but the workspace as well. So make sure that stays clean. And if you spill, properly clean it up. It feels sort of trivial because it's about photography and that doesn't feel like a big dangerous thing, but these are chemicals and these could be a big problem. So be careful. You have instructions that are really the right thing to do and the right thing to follow. Right now, we're not developing anything. We're mixing chemicals. And in the Cinestill kit, there is 6 bottles that are all separate parts of 3 different chemicals. Our first step is a developer. Our second step is a bleach and fix, a Blix, and then there's also a rinse at the end. So those are the 3 steps in our 2-bath kit. This is the 1-quart kit. It's about the same as a liter. You guys know that. And that is our middle row of instructions there. For the developer, these 3 chemicals are going to get added to water at a specific temperature. To keep water at a specific temperature, or to get it to a specific temperature, I have this. It's like a regular consumer
sous vide cooker.
And I need it now because our water has to be a specific temperature when we mix. Remember, we're doing the 1-quart kit. I need 20 ounces of water. at 120 degrees. So let's get this bath ready. Just for the water bath, I use regular tap water. None of the chemicals are actually going to be mixed in this water. This is just, you know, to sort of keep our temperatures. There we go. That's enough of a water bath. My faucets are not equipped for this. And we know how much water we're going to need to be at 120 degrees, 20 ounces. So why don't I just heat up that amount of water and not a whole thing? I use distilled water. You should use distilled water because eventually this water is going to be what's in the chemicals, what our chemicals are. What did it say, 20 ounces? 20 ounces or 591 milliliters. Can I get this to show well? How close am I there? There we go. 20 ounces. Can you see the meniscus? Maybe. There's our 20 ounces. This is the container I use for my development. It's just a reused water bottle. I recommend doing that as well. You could buy specific bottles. I don't see any reason to. The last thing that was in this bottle was another batch of developer, and then I rinsed it out with distilled water. Again, I think it's worth using distilled water for something like that. So the water's already at 94, so this is gonna have a little bit of space to catch up. I'm gonna squeeze out some of the air, not too much because I don't wanna totally deform the bottle. I'm just gonna let that heat up in there. And I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit. That's the old one, I just leave there so I can see all the times. And our Blix as well, our second step, we know it's gonna be at, let me get this better so you can read it. It's gonna need to be at 125 degrees, and we know how much water we'll need for our 1 quart kit, 18 ounces. So why don't I get that up to temperature at the same time as well? Let me check one more time, the ounces, 18. So this is, once again, distilled water. How was that? Pretty good? Can you see the meniscus? Okay. Now if somebody comments and says, you didn't check the meniscus. And same thing, I'm reusing a bottle. Green top, just so I remember it's Blix, even though the bottles are different. And again, I am reusing this bottle, but I rinsed it out one last time with distilled water. It's true with many things like this, and I've really used this to describe myself as why I think about it, but this is a pretty technical process, and there's precision in a lot of steps, but in general, the technical is more important than the precise. It's more important that you understand what you're doing and how these things are going to be affected than it is for you to be precise in every degree, in every milliliter, in every second. If that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. So right now, all I have to do is wait for these to be 120 degrees. I'm going to give these a while to get up to temperature. Our third mix, the stabilizer, does not have to be at a specific temperature. So it's not something I'm gonna worry about now. So I'm gonna let these get up to temperature and I'll come back in. That was about 15 minutes. 120 degrees is pretty hot to the touch. I can feel in these bottles that it's there. I might have given a little too much time. Who can say? But I can feel that these are pretty hot. Hot enough that I'm happy to do my next steps now. Okay, so I'm gonna be working with chemicals now. I'm putting gloves on. And if we look at our, hopefully I can touch the screen with the gloves, yes. If we look at our mix here, how much do we need of A, B, and C? We need 8 ounces, 2 ounces, and 2 ounces. Well, lucky for us, part 1, 8 ounces, part 1, and then part 2 are both 2 ounces. So these are already measured out for you. The only thing you have to be precise about is the water, and even then, I don't think you need to be that precise. Okay, it says mix well between every part. I keep a pencil that I won't use as a puncturer to these lids, because sometimes they're hard to get off. So I will puncture and push. That should be plenty. Double check before I mix anything. This is developer part A. Do that in the sink proper. It says stir while you do it. So I'll do something like that. Make sure it moves around. To me, especially for the first step, as long as I mix it well after this is in here, I really don't worry about it. Okay, that's all part A. Put the lid on. Shake it up. Great. Step 2, pierce, push, pour. Cap it. Perfect. Part 3. This one's child safe. And we pierce, and we push, and we pour. Notice a slight color shift. Not even, it's really not that significant. And I'll mix it up like that, and there we go. Just in case of any spillage, rinse in the water. But there we go. That's our developer. It'll be clear now, but as soon as you use it, I guess it's not totally clear, but as soon as you use it, it gains a lot of color. I don't know exactly how true this is. This is definitely sensitive to light, or it's related to things that are sensitive to light. I keep it in the dark. I don't know if you have to. To me, it just seems like good practice, right? Seal these up. And I keep a bunch of old, I should have gotten this out before, but I like to have a plastic bag specifically for this garbage, just so it isn't sitting loose. And I should have done this earlier, if I was thinking I would have. We need hotter water in this bottle for our second step. So I'm gonna turn that up to 125. So I'll come back in. I don't know how long that was. I've been standing here shaking this, coming back in every once in a while. I'm comfortable saying this is 125 degrees, and it's the same, where are we at? A. It's the same steps as before. Puncture, push, and pour. I need a second one of those bottles with the big wide mouths. It's so convenient. Part B, child safe, puncture, push, and pour. There's almost a metallic smell to this, almost a metallic taste in the air. Relatively unpleasant. And part C, this is the one that makes it. Just kidding. I should probably cut that out. Puncture, push, and pour. Great. Lid on. Make sure that's stirred up. Quick dunk in case I got anything on the outside. And then I'll squeeze out some air as well. This one's should be close to the top. There's that. That goes down in there. Do I need to squeeze the air out of the dev? Nah, just a little bit. That's it for the hot water. So I just take the cord off and hang it up on that towel rack. And there's those 3 sealed away. I need one more bottle. I think I've got an empty one. Yes. One more bottle. This is a fresh one for the stabilizer, the rinse bath. 30 ounces, and then 2 ounces of this, which of course is the full thing. Ounces. Final rinse. I know I have a lid that says S. Yes. Just so it's labeled. There's an S for stabilizer. And this one, again, I don't think you have to get the air out, but I'll pinch it just in case. There you go. So those are all three of our steps: developer, Blix, and stabilizer. That is our chemicals mixed. We'll process next. You can probably tell it's not the same day. This is a few batches into this set of chemicals. I recorded one right away, like you should, like you expected me to, and I just didn't like the way I presented it. So I'm trying again, but this is good. I get to talk about chemical reuse. This is the beginning of that second part, developing film, actually doing a batch at home. And the first thing I need to do chronologically, probably not in the thinking about the process, is getting this water bath and our chemicals up to temperature. So I'm gonna fill this up. It's gonna take me way too long. But for my Instant Pot, I shouldn't be that nervous about the cable, but I am. I have to hit M, and then this needs to be at 102 degrees, which is a temperature you'll find in the instructions. Right there, 102 for normal development. That's always what I use. And then I'll set this up to like, say 20 minutes. And I don't want this to be warm. I want this to be about the same temperature as the chemicals. The chemicals are just in this cabinet. So Blix and developer, you'll remember these are the same bits. You can see they're a lot darker now. I've done 4 rolls of 35 and 1 roll of 120. I'll also get out stabilizer, and that's it for now. I need these to warm up with the water. So I don't want the water to be that much warmer than them. See, it already says 80, that feels a little warm. So once this beeps to say, hey, I'm up to temperature, 1, I give it more time because the water feels a little warmer than these. And 2, I wouldn't claim to have, you know, even a grade schooler's understanding of fluid dynamics, but I'm sure that all of the liquid in these bottles is not the same temperature as all of the liquid in this bin. So I'll give it a lot of extra time after it dings to tell me it's up to temperature, just to make sure. If I'm especially nervous, I'll check it with my thermometer, but generally I'll pick it up, move it around, and feel to the touch how it feels. You'll get a sort of a feeling. 102 is close enough to body temperature that you'll know when you're close. I need very dry hands for this next step. Here we are just at my desk. So this is the start of, okay, we're doing a batch of development. And all the sort of specialized stuff you need, I have these reels in this Patterson tank system. Realistically, you'll get something very similar to this. There's a brand called Jorb that makes something quite similar. This is a tank that fits reels, and the whole idea, once you screw that on, is this is light tight, but you can still get liquids on the inside. So for home development, it saves you a whole dark room. Probably you'll buy this all together, and I think you should buy it all together, and I think you should buy it new. I bought this used, and I had some trouble with the reels getting stuck. The lid doesn't totally seal, so I can't invert this the way I would like to. So I would recommend getting a new, just the tank and a 2-reel kit. This is also the exact right size for 1 liter of chemicals, which is the right amount for 2 rolls at a time, and you make a liter of chemical. With the Cinestill kit, it's all sort of synergistic. Anyway, I also have this pair of scissors that we'll need. This is a dark bag. If you can find one used, get it used, but they're not very expensive on places like Amazon. And I have this film puller. I like to keep the film reels intact so I can reuse them for other things. And of course, you need some film that's ready to develop. So I have these that I just leave in this cup when they're all developed. This is a +3 push, and I don't have a second pair for that. This is black and white. I don't have a second pair for that. I should explain that in a little more detail. If you aren't familiar with pushing film, pushing means you underexpose when you shoot the photo and you overdevelop when you develop the photo. And you can squeeze a little more sensitivity, a little more effective sensitivity out of any given film. But because I'm doing 2 rolls at a time and they're all going to be in the same chemicals, they're all going to get the same temperatures in the same time, it needs to be 2 things that are at box speed, or 2 things that are +1, or 2 things that are +2, etc. I also pull out black and white here. There are black and white films that are compatible for C41, but most sort of quote-unquote professional black and white isn't. And same thing, I would need a pair for it if I wanted to do a batch of 2. There's no reason you can't do just one roll at a time, but if you can fit 2 in the tank, I'm always going to do 2. Okay? Okay. This is a disposable I'm going to do for a friend, and this is a box speed roll of just Fuji 400. My camera lets me leave the leader out, my Class W, but if you don't have the leader out, that's where this film puller comes in. So, I'm actually going to sit down and really show you. The way these work, you've got 3 tongues, one that's fixed, an A, and a B. And I honestly struggle to visualize what's happening on the inside, but what I've learned, all 3 tongues go in. You want this to be reeled up pretty tight, so I'm going counterclockwise. So it clicks, and you put out tongue A, and then it clicks again. I go another half, I put out tongue B, and then I push down like that. See, I can already tell I didn't get it. That will happen to you a lot. It happens to me all the time. And that time, I didn't get it. And again, all 3 tongues, click A, right after the click B. That time I got it. There you go. There's our leader out. If you guys have never opened a disposable camera, I'll show you that. I honestly don't think there's that much of a reason once you're developing your own film to be using a disposable camera. But if I can develop 2 rolls at a time, it takes me the same amount of time and really doesn't, expend chemicals at some like crazy rate, I'll happily do it for them. You got to make sure you're past the last roll. Every time you shoot, you're rolling film back into the reel, and it'll be over here. Sometimes it's easy to pry them open. Sometimes it's hard. You got to be a little bit careful because there is a battery in here. The flash capacitors can hold a charge. Wherever that went, there's our film. 800 speed. That's actually pretty cool. I'm going to use the film puller again, but it's important to know that this will shoot really, really close to the edge of the leader. So you have to be careful with how much you pull out. Counterclockwise until it clicks. A. Counterclockwise until it clicks. B. Come out slow. I didn't get it that time. But I honestly never, ever expect to get it on the first roll. Click A. I heard like half of a click. Let's try that. Definitely not. Was that the one? Yes, it was. So even that is like, I want to be really, really cautious about how far I pull that out. Don't want to lose any photos. So let me put these things out of the way. And that's just garbage. I will pull this out just a little bit. We're still part of the leader. And I'll cut it into an arrow. That'll help us later. And here, I'm not even going to pull out more than that. I'm just going to cut the edge like that. Plus, we do have like a little bit of extra room on the reels because these are 27 exposures instead of 36. Anyway, that probably almost seemed pointless, but I'm prepping these to go onto these reels and then into this tank.
Why do we have to do that, Jorb?
And important to remember that just because mechanically these have gone through a camera doesn't mean that, if I unreel this, I can see my images. No, it was sensitive to light when it went into the camera. Nothing chemically has changed to this film, right? So it's going to be sensitive to light until we go through development. The only images on these right now are latent images. We need to sort of lock them in, so to speak, with the development process. So you do have to be careful to not expose these to light, and that's what so much of this process is sort of guided by, especially the dark bag. So what goes into the dark bag, I will put in on the left side both rolls of film. If it mattered to me which one was on top or on bottom, I would mark them somehow. Because this one came out of a disposable, it's got the spiky top, and I'll know anyway. But those go on the left with the pair of scissors. I'll put the whole assembly of this tank together, which is like the tank itself, that ring on top, that shaft, and then both of these reels, and then the lid. And I'll half screw it on. So everything that's going to happen inside here, I'll probably like recreate and let you watch, but I'll still sort of narrate it as I go now. I'm opening the tank, I'm leaving that O-ring on top, and I'm pulling out the first of my 2 reels. And if you look at the reels, they have a set of sort of ramps, I'll call it, like an arrow pointing to this little ball bearing section. And that's where your film starts. And those ball bearings allow you to just sort of ratchet the whole thing back and forth. And that'll pull the film onto the reel without you having to do much. So I have film in my right hand. I can feel that it isn't the disposable. And so I slip it over one of those ramps, I slip it over the other, and then I very carefully pull it maybe halfway through, maybe a whole rotation, and then I'll start that ratcheting movement. And I keep my thumbs right by the ramps just to have a sort of orientation of where the film is entering. And the film is just hanging in front of, and the film is just sort of hanging off between me and the reel. I can feel it bouncing around a little bit. Don't want to go too fast. Sometimes you need to pull it back yourself. Feeling a bit more resistance, but that's normal. Every time I turn it now, I'm pushing more film physically. So I'm going slower, pulling down the film. And then that is the end of the roll. So I'm reaching, I can feel that I can't pull any more film out of the canister. So I set that all down. It's still kind of up on its edge. I'm grabbing the scissors in the top left. I'm holding them against the opening of the film reel. I'm giving myself maybe another 1/2 inch, maybe 1/4 inch. That's it. And then I'm cranking the reels, the last few steps, to make sure everything's on there. And that is it. So now I'm reaching to the tank. I'm pulling off the empty reel. I'm making sure the center shaft is in the middle of the tank, and I'm putting the loaded reel straight down on the bottom of it. Okay, and I'm going to do that same exact thing with the other roll. I'm finding the ramps onto one ramp, onto the other ramp, pulling it across myself just to get it started. But same thing, that ratcheting motion. I said that was a shorter one, and it was. I just found the end of it. And cut, finish rolling the reel, and then I can put it in the tank. I'll make sure that the O-ring is at the top of the tank. I'll find the lid, and I'll turn it left until I feel it drop onto the threads. And then I'll turn right, make sure it's tight, and I will feel scissors are there. There's one empty can. Somewhere in here, there's another empty can. There it is. And that is everything. That went pretty well. Check that that's tight. Dark bag. Velcro opened. Zipper opened. There we are with our loaded tank. See, it felt like I was cutting so close to the edge and I didn't. That's honestly like a reusable amount. And this, where I wasn't trying to be close, they're about the same. Anyway, scissors come with us because we'll need them. Loaded tank comes with because of course we'll need it. That's where our film is at. That there, that there. I like to keep the box, everything that I've already developed in the box for that roll. So now, because I'm reusing chemicals, you need to do some math. Every time you use this set of chemicals, you're expending it a little bit. But you can reuse it for a lot of rolls. And I'll put a graph on screen, just like a Google Sheets that I did myself. I combined math that's just in these instructions. So this push processing notes, they give you the math for push processing, 1.3, 1.7, 2.5, and they give you the math for chemical reuse, 2% of the recommended development time, added for each previously developed roll. So I have just a graph for that. I'll put it up on screen if you want to take a screenshot or use it or whatever. And you could probably stop thinking about it there, and I could probably stop thinking about it there, and it would be fine. Okay, previously developed rolls 5. I can see on the chart where I need to be for that, and off I go. But 2 of these rolls were push processed. So I mark them, again, just so I don't forget. These both got a 2-stop push. I can only imagine that push processing develops more chemicals than standard processing, right? So I sort of like rule of thumb, 1/3 of a can for every stop of a push. I have done 4 total stops of overdevelopment, and I consider like 1/3 of a stop for every stop of a push. So this is 1 1/3 additional cans of development. I might be wrong about that math. There might not be any reason for me to do it, but I would rather overdevelop a little bit than underdevelop. So I account for it. So I'm going to go on the slot in my chart that has 6 rolls previously developed. And maybe I'm, not accounting for something by a few seconds, but I think there's so many other variables that it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I also have the 2 that we're developing now. It is chemicals time. So gloves are coming on. Paper towels. And you know what I have to do? I got to stop filming for a second so I can check my chart. So yes, you'll be looking at the chart right now. If I've already done 6 rolls and the rolls I'm developing are at box speed, I need to be 3 minutes and 56 seconds. Okay, that's our time. First thing I'm gonna do is get some water that feels like it's about the same temperature as what's in here. And I'm gonna sort of pre-soak this reel. I'm gonna pre-soak our film. That is to get it up to temperature and also the reels and the tank and everything around there. This might be unnecessary. I might be worried about edge cases, but to me, it just sort of logically makes sense that all this stuff, if we're particular about its temperature, shouldn't we want to make sure that everything is staying at that temperature? So that needs about a minute of a pre-soak. There's 23 seconds on there. I might as well just use that. Oh, and a timer. I didn't include a timer as something you need sort of specifically. I'm sure many of you will use your phone.
I prefer it so I can use it with gloved, chemical contacted hands.
So what did I say? 3 minutes and 56 seconds? I'm just gonna leave that at 4. Feel this, it's close. Feel these. They've been in there a little bit extra. I can see it's been 4 or 5 minutes at temperature, and they raised up to temperature with it. And when I move them around, it feels about right, just to the touch, which is what you want. But I'll give that another 25 seconds or so. I realized I can't do my snap transitions for that much longer. There's about to be some chemicals on these gloves. So that's just water coming out. What we're seeing is dyes from the film. It's not weird. There should be color there. You shouldn't be surprised by color there, I should say. Okay, 4 minutes on the clock. The way I do this, I pull out the step I'm about to do, and I put in the next step just to keep things sort of level, because this will sputter if it's too low. Your stabilizer doesn't need to be up to temperature. Certainly not as important that it's warm as these steps, but I like to have it warm. Okay, from this point on, time is a lot more important. You might have your lid ready to agitate. I use a stir stick, a swizzle stick, or I'll just do it by hand. But however you're gonna agitate, have that in mind before you start doing all the time-sensitive, agitation-sensitive steps. So I'm going to start pouring. And about halfway through, I'll start this. And this is constant agitation for the first 10 seconds. Part of that is accomplished just by the pouring in. But I'll spin it around myself. And then every 30 seconds after that, so I'm gonna say 45 is our mark. So we'll do 45 and 15. It'll say 4 inversion cycles. I'm just getting the swizzle stick in there. It'll say 4 inversion cycles. My lid isn't watertight, so I can't invert. And I've just been doing my agitation by spinning this sort of swizzle stick. And it's been fine enough for me. While we wait, get our funnel ready. Our funnel, I missed my 15 seconds, but that's okay. I'm gonna reiterate the technical and precise again. Why do you agitate? You're moving the chemicals around. Anything that's already been expended gets moved around. So the film isn't only in contact with expended chemicals. There's fresh stuff moving around, touching it. See, I really got to pay attention. So I just spin, oops, swizzle stick came off. Twice one side, twice another side. And I consider that good. People will get a little more rambunctious with the inversions. Maybe you want to stomp it to get bubbles off. I find that keeping it chill, but just making sure you do it regularly does fine. Anyway, I got the funnel ready because chemical reuse. I want to retain all this developer. I'm going to use it for another, whatever, 15 rolls. Okay, let's spin. Every time we hit 45, every time we hit 15, I'll do that again until the end. I can't snap, so I guess I'll just speed this up. Okay, and as we get to the end of our development stage, I want to move pretty quickly onto the Blix, so that will come out. The next thing that I will do after that is a rinse. So I just put a whole thing of distilled water in there. Again, it doesn't have to be up to temperature, but I like it when it's a little warmer. I missed an agitation cycle. That's okay. The swizzle stick comes out. If I wasn't talking, I'd be better, I swear to God. And I stop the timer. And I'm going to pour this back into its container very carefully. This might bubble and foam up a little bit, yes. So I will leave that very carefully in the sink. I will undo this dev. I really don't want chemicals from one stage getting into a next. So I'm being really, really careful with my gloves right now. This is 8 minutes, so let me get that on the timer. For chemical reuse, you don't really have to increase the timing of the Blix. You don't have to increase the length of the Blix. It's something that happens until it's sort of a completion process anyway. So this is agitation for the first 10 seconds. I'm being technical and not precise and not really paying attention to when it was 10. I can't get the swizzle stick on. There we go. Last blast. So I'm going to say 30 and 0 is where we're done there. We have a bunch of other stuff to do in the midst of this process. I need to clean out that funnel because we're going to reuse it for the Blix, and you really do not want chemicals from one stage getting into the next. Push the air out again, as remember. I don't want these bubbles to come out either. That's not even. Oh, just missed it by a second. Back. There we go. That's airtight, and that goes back in the cabinet because we don't need it anymore. Now we're about to hit our second swizzling. Get the Blix over there. There's that. Agitation done. Again, make sure this is rinsed. My gloves too. Get that ready to go. On the bottle, I'll need the lid too. I had to restart filming, but you didn't miss anything. I've continued to every 30 seconds agitate this, and I swapped out the big thing of distilled water for a small one. That's it. Honestly, at this point, I can turn that off. Oop, I missed that by a few seconds. It's actually fine, though. Okay, that's our last cycle. I'm gonna rinse that off. You see some shot out the back. So it is really worth rinsing that off in between steps. For now, I'm just going to leave that in the sink. Give that a little stir up. Okay, get ready to put our chemicals back in. I would normally let that ring, but it's so annoying for the video. This as well is going to bubble up. I can't see it, my phone's in the way. So that was the last step where I should be worried about the stuff being sensitive to light. And I know that, but I still keep it totally in the container for a little bit. So I get all the air out, put the lid on, or as much air as I feel compelled to. And there we go. Back in the dark. And I think it says a minute of constant water flow or 7 refill and dumps. I'll do this whole step just with tap water. Let's get out this, my stabilizer, and this, my warmed water. And I'm going to start throwing stuff that just needs a good rinse into the bucket there. Okay, it's probably not so you can take it out, get your first sort of a preview. See what's on there. I can see images, so that's good. And on this roll, there's something. So I've got good exposures on both. That's really just me being impatient, especially as far back as I reeled. I was getting nervous that I showed you guys how to do this, and I had a roll turn back with nothing. I've lost count of my tap water rinses. So that was all the tap water rinses. I'll do one with distilled water. I read this somewhere once as a like getting rid of water spots thing, and I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to like use that much distilled water every time I develop. But it's helped me. I had trouble with water spots, and now I don't. So I end with distilled water, and I really agitate it, make sure that it's totally rinsed. A final dump, and then this is time for the stabilizer. And the stabilizer has instructions. You have to agitate for the first, whatever it says, 15 seconds. So all this stuff that I made sure has had a good rinse, because I really don't want any chemicals to still be on it. Put the swizzle stick on. Spin that back and forth. I actually need a little bit more. I'm not totally covering the edges here. Oops, I had the lid on. There we go. This is probably the time to mention it. I'll mention it early as well. I've had trouble with these reels, that ball bearing mechanism getting sort of gunked up. I think it's from this step. I think it's from letting these soak in the stabilizer for a bit, maybe other chemicals. But I have been using a toothbrush with dish soap on it and just like brushing all the ball bearing bits, and that has completely revitalized them. It's like I never had problems with them in the first place. Okay, this is another step. I don't know that anybody else does it quite like this, but I will take both of these guys out. Try and preserve as much of that as I can. Gloves come off, and they go into my chemical bag. I got a freeze frame. I don't mention it in the video, but it's super important. You're gonna see me use my bare hands to do this a lot. I wouldn't recommend that. When I look at the data sheet for the stabilizer, it says if it comes into contact with your skin, wash it off. That's before it's been diluted like
15x.
So it's super, super important that you wash your hands if you do it this way immediately after touching all the stabilizer. And you'll watch me wash my hands, but I don't like emphasize it. It's super important. If you touch any of this stuff with your bare hands, wash your hands. Okay? Okay. And I will, one at a time, dismantle the reels. Gosh, that's really hard. Clockwise turn. And then drop the full reel into the stabilizer. Give it a spin. Fish out one end of it. And then, so this is the disposable. You can see, even with not pulling anything out, that's how close to the leader we were for our first image. So I had whatever that is, 8 or 9 sprockets to go, but we didn't need it. I'll cut this off even, so I'll go right there. And then into the stabilizer, and just between 2 fingers, just one time, pull the whole thing out. Not so bad. And I have just this, let me pull this way up here, mic stand set up. I'll clip that on. These are Kimtech wipes. These were mentioned, I think, in a video about this kit. And I thought I didn't need them. I had troubles with water spots. I bought them, and what do you know, they did a great job. So I would only use these for this step. I wouldn't use regular paper towels or anything. So I fold it in half, and then sort of twist. So you have pressure on that one side, and I'll just go. And that wipe is already spent. And another one on the back side. Nobody's allowed to look at my toilet. Same thing. Twist. I can see I didn't get that top totally. Twist, so there's pressure. Not enough that you pull it off the binder clip and go. Actually, using the binder clips is another thing. There are like film clips that would be better at this, but I'm not interested in buying those. I've had fine results with what I'm using. My friends will be disappointed that this is all that's on the end of the disposable, but I have a group of 3 binder clips that I clip on at the end as my weight. And that's it. That film will dry just like that. And I'll do the same for the other reel. Push the shaft out. This is clockwise. That one was much easier. Drop it in so every surface gets covered, excuse me. Shake it up. Same thing as before between my 2 fingers. This is longer. This is 36 exposures, and the 24, 27 is what the disposable was. So I have to take these out and just do it over the mat sometimes. Okay, these look like healthy exposures as well. This is pretty much exactly what I want to see as a healthy negative. I can see enough sort of contrast between the darks and the lights. These seem well exposed. I really can't remember what they're from though. Same thing, binder clip. There's our first one, all the way to the ground. Great. Into the bag. You guys get a good look at the dogs playing poker. And on the back, same thing. Let's see emulsion inside, gotta be careful. Great. I'm sitting on my toilet. Perfect. And now those will dry. Anything that touched or might have touched a chemical is getting a rinse. These just have to dry for a while. How long? I don't know. It's different. Honestly, when you use the Kim wipes, it seems like it goes pretty quick. But I leave them for a while just to make sure that when I'm handling them, totally dry by the time I start scanning it. I'm not going to talk about scanning today. I feel like that's so much bigger of a topic. People might just use their smartphone. People might use a digital camera. I use a flatbed scanner. And I also feel like I'm not good at the scanning part of it yet. I'm so imprecise. I'm so lazy with dust. Anyway, not only have I saved a ton of money by dealing with all this stuff, I've gotten better at other parts of the process because I'm taking more photos. I'm doing photography more. And that to me is like so worth it. You know what I mean? If this enables me to do something I care about more, it's worth the trouble and the startup cost. In some ways the risk, in some ways like the quality drop from a lab, but it's sort of, you know, I'm becoming attached to this part of the process in the same way that I'm attached to taking photos now. And I think that's awesome. I'm very happy that I started doing it, and I encourage you to consider it as well, okay? Okay, I'm not used to talking to myself like this when I hit a video, but that's all I got to show you. If you have any questions or, you know, you think I like royally fucked something up, comment, let me know, subscribe if you want to see more. My name's Jorb. I love film. Thanks for watching. Cheers and so long.